All I can say about Keegan is that entire issue and the entire release has allowed us to glean significant investigative leads.
All right, so
Okay, so that is from News Nation, and I think that is exactly what happened. They did get significant investigative leads from Keegan Klein and from the social media side. I sort of feel like the social media aspect was something that was late in the investigative game, so to speak. So happy Halloween, everyone. I think it's still 15 minutes left, Halloween in America. It's so ironic that on Halloween, a new monster has sort of come forward, isn't it? So I'm actually, in a way, pleased to see that so many of you say it's hard to say in terms of which side of the bridge someone walked down, right? Did bridge guy approach from the north side, from the south side? Some of you say you're not quite sure where north is or whatever, but 33%, a third of you say it's hard to say, and 22% say it doesn't matter. So around 50% of you guys seem to be confused about that. So in this live, I was quite confused when I did the previous live. In this live, I want to push away that confusion. I want to bring clarity to this question because it's a very important question. It's a very simple question, but it's a very important question. On which side did Bridge Guy approach? That's the first question. The other one is, on which side were Abby and Libby, right? And all of that's important to figure out what Bridge Guy was thinking and what is the strategy behind this crime, right? So that's what we're going to look into. I see nobody says the north side from Libby's side of town. That's quite interesting. So from the vote so far, 0 are saying from the north side. 44% say the south side where he lived. They approach from that side, and then the rest say hard to say, doesn't matter. So let's have a quick look at who is in chat. I'm not quite sure why that's still up. That was from News Nation. I did put a link to that in the description. Let's bring up comments. Lady V, Daniela, Paul Ward, morning from the UK. Yeah, so obviously the folks on my line of longitude, on my side of the world, I guess, the more in the Eastern Hemisphere, probably it's an unusual time for you guys where you guys can actually see me. Most of the time we do this based on US time. Paul Ward said, did the girls walk across the bridge? It does look that way. So we're going to deal with that aspect. Do I have an image to share? I also want to talk a little bit about this press conference, which was a whole lot of nothing. Everyone had a lot of expectations. We thought we were going to find out something, and all we really found out was what we already knew, that Richard Allen is suspected, charged on 2 counts of murdering 2 teenagers, right? We didn't really learn anything beyond that. So let's see who else is here. Steve Yeager, didn't I take a video picture with him following them? Yeah, we're going to look at that. Lady V says it's 2 a.m. where I am. Well, this is also for the night owls, the Halloween night owls. Helena, good to see you. Jean Anderson, Sharon Conroy, Daniela. So we're going to also look at some new insights, some things that I certainly have found out in the last while. But for me, the most important thing that I want to highlight is getting a proper orientation of the map and a proper orientation of how Abby and Libby moved through this terrain, and also how Bridge Guy moved and what is sort of going on, right? So let's kind of get deal with that. Alina says, seeing the coverage today of the more extensive video of Bridge Guy, I see the resemblance to Richard Allen. Okay. Songbird is here as well. Good to see you. Snowflake Forest, who's in Hawaii, you having some of the last minutes of today of, well, it's yesterday my time, October 31st. Happy Halloween. Okay. Okay, Timmy, you really make my life a lot harder by sitting on my lap, Timmy. I know you like it, but it's very hard to kind of access everything with the dog on my lap as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to bring up this this image. So you can see in this image that I have over here, and we're going to look at quite a few images of the bridge, but can you see that at this section down here, you can see river, you can see part of the, I guess, the creek, but a lot of that bridge actually goes through over land and over, how can I put it, over trees. One section of the bridge is actually literally over water, and the other section, which goes on for quite some distance, goes over land and trees, right? And if you look at the image behind me, you see kind of the same thing. You can see kind of where I am in the image, it's over water. You can see that way where those two individuals are. If you go much further, that is all over land, right? I'm going to take you guys through what that means and which side of the bridge is which in a way that I think really needs to be clarified. Like, I'm quite disappointed in terms of, and maybe something that's been out there, I just haven't seen it. But to me, the most important aspect to starting to figure out this case is you need to know on which side of the bridge Abby and Libby encountered Bridge Guy directly, like face to face. That's the first, that's like Delphi Murders 101, the first order of business. I'm quite surprised 5.5 years later, that's not the first thing people mention, and then you sort of go from there. So you guys following my channel, I'm hoping to make this absolutely clear and absolutely specific. Okay, so by the end of this episode, you should know an answer. I think it is the answer, but let's say an answer to that particular question. We are also going to look at this image of Libby, if I can bring it up. This one over here. I'm going to come back to this, but can you see in this image that the river is on the other side? Can you see the river is over there, right? And actually where she's standing, if you could go straight down, there is actually land under her, and this land continues for some distance this way, right? That's the first thing just to understand, just is that basically the bridge, sorry, Timmy, but you must stop jumping on my leg, okay? Timmy, go and sleep. Timmy always thinks when I do a live, it's time for Madonna and Child. And he still thinks it's time for that. Okay, Timmy, come. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to show you here is the this section where the arrow is pointing is over land, right? So you can imagine the bridge, basically half of the bridge being over water and the other bridge being over land, right? And so you might want to write this down or just try and make a mental note of this, is the section of the bridge that is over water is on the north side, or it's on the side where Libby lived, or it's on the side away from Delphi, or it's on the side away from where bridge guy lived, or on the side away from where Abby lived, or on the side away from where Richard Allen lived. In other words, down here is where it's so hard to concentrate with this going on. So if you imagine this is the south side, the bridge goes like this, right? The north side is where the proper public trailhead is, right? On the other side. In other words, the sort of more scenic side of the bridge, which has the river directly below, is the north side, is the public side where the public path is, right? Okay, got that. The south side, and you might want to draw this on a piece of paper and just make it absolutely explicit because it's easy to get it mixed up. Timmy, please stop licking my hand. Let me do that. Okay, let's try and get focused. Does that make sense? So the south side is over land and is on the Richard Allen side of the river, of the creek. It's also on the Abbey Williams side of the creek, and it's also on the Delphi side of the creek, right? It's also on the side where private property is, right? Does that make sense, how far we've gotten already? Songbird says, got it. Okay. Edelweiss says the bridge extends past the river and there's a service road where your arrow points. Okay. Edelweiss, if you've got any footage from there, you must please send it on to Terry. Maybe connect on Instagram or something, or you can connect with me. Let me put on a ticker. I think I can do this. If you want to connect with me, to send me, if you're a local and you live in the area, you're welcome to send me photos you've taken or footage you've got. That's always good. Or you can connect on Patreon. That's also fine. Or you can connect with Terry on Instagram, something like that. Okay, let's kind of get going. Got quite a lot to get through. So like many of you, I also watched the live feed yesterday, horrible as it was, of a press conference that was only 21 minutes, but even in that long time, it did little more than confirm what we already knew. 50-year-old Richard Allen has been charged with the double murder. Now, look how different he looks in these two pictures. Look how different he looks over there on the right-hand side. In his booking photo, Allen still looks shell-shocked, doesn't he? He looks kind of indignant and shocked. Notice how the smugness in the image to the left is completely missing in the image to the right. Now, I do have a couple of early comments. I wrote some of them down, but I've got to say alarm bells went off when I heard them say during the press conference that they are still asking the public for tips. That really worried me. This suggests that the legal case is far from cut and dried. Secondly, during the run-up to the press, someone asked, why didn't Kathy recognize her husband as Bridgeman, or words to that effect? It was this moment, right? And I want to talk about that. The ex-FBI agent basically said it wasn't a fair question. So I really want to deal with that aspect, which I'll do a little bit later. What I want to deal with now is, as I say, these additional insights. And I think the best way to begin to do that is with this image. So hard to do this in the way I want to do it with this dog on my lap. Anyway, sometimes you got to make sacrifices, right? Okay. We are also going to look at Google Earth in a moment, but we'll get to that in a second. Liz Graham says, glad I caught this live. Paul Ward, the intensity of his eyes is obvious. He does have an intensity. We're also going to look at the fact that he works in a pharmacy, certain aspects to that definitely open up all sorts of interesting and troubling corridors. We're going to deal with that as well. Okay. Merrin Powell says, need a good profiler to analyze his motives, any childhood history. Yeah. Hopefully you've got one here, Merrin. Hag90 says, good to see you. Third time I've been able to catch you live. Thanks for keeping us updated. Good to see you here. Zircon says what we all thought and also said, very disappointing. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's deal with some of these first insights. So we're going to start with the route Abby and Libby took. And I think we need to go to Google Earth, but let's just start a little bit down that road. Did you guys know that Abby slept over at Libby's house over the weekend? Certainly on Saturday going into Sunday, and then Sunday going into Monday. So you could have a situation where one girl was engaging with Anthony Shots on her phone while the other was literally looking over her shoulder. Have you thought about that possibility? I'm sure many of you have, but yeah, we have a situation where Abby's literally spending the weekend, extended time with Libby right before all of this happens. What do you think they were doing during that extended time? Well, wasn't it that? So on Monday, they went from their grandparents' home, which is north of Delphi, near Peru, near Keegan Klein's home, to the Monan High Bridge, and that would be the shortest route there, right? Had they, I think the reason why Timmy's wanting to sit by me is because he's cold. Had they needed to pick up Abby, the shortest route from there would have been on Richard Allen's side. Do you guys follow? So again, knowing more about this case, if they went round to pick up Abby, which is close to Richard Allen's house, you would imagine they would have just driven up the road and entered that side. In other words, entered from the south side. But that's not what happened. They didn't enter from the south side. And also, Abby was already at Libby. So they just would have gone to the nearest point from their grandparents' house, right? Okay, I want to see if I can bring up an oldish map that I've prepared already. Let's see if I can just, I hope I can find it. Where are you? Okay, so Lisa Wilson kindly provided me with this map. I don't know if Lisa's watching, but if you are, hi Lisa, and thanks for sending this through. If you look at this map, you are seeing the beginning of the bridge trail that's over there. So that's the north side of this river, Deer Creek. That's the north side. This is the south side, right? North, south, top north, bottom south. Okay, and that is where they were dropped off, right? That's the reported drop-off location. It wasn't over there, but it was nevertheless, what's the word? It was nevertheless to cut in, to shorten that hike through there, right? And I believe the grandparents lived somewhere up here. It's not quite on this map, whereas Libby lived slightly down here, and Richard Allen lived slightly down here. So what this is telling you is that they approached the bridge from this side, the public side, the typical side, and then the bridge is over here, right? You can see it crosses over the creek and then it continues for some distance, right? The bridge is from there to there, basically. And so they crossed over from the north side of the bridge all the way to the south side. In other words, they walked that pretty dangerous bridge section. And probably what was arranged between Bridge Guy and them was, I'll meet you on the opposite side. I'll meet you on the south side, right? And the idea with that was to have a discreet private meeting. I think it was from their perspective and from his perspective. Why do you think they would want, why do you think Libby and Abby might want to meet some dude privately? Like, why would they also want it to be private? We can understand why Bridge Guy would want it to be private. He wants to commit a crime. He doesn't want people around. But why would Abby and Libby want it to be private? Okay, so we're going to get to that in a second. If you're not quite sure, this is another map sent to me by Lisa. It makes it a bit clearer. That's where they cut in to join the trail, right? That's where they cut in. That's the bridge. And they went all the way to the other side. That is the crime scene. There's the cemetery. Okay, we're going to come back to all of that. I think we need, now might be a good time to go to Google Earth. So let's do that. And let's have a look at the Earth. And should we put in Delphi? Not Greece, Indiana. Okay, so let's see where it takes us. Okay, so there's Trailhead Park. There's the Wabash River. But we don't want to look at that river. We want to look at Deer Creek, right? It definitely is so disorientating because this is not coming from a north-south view. I think if I follow the Deer Creek, it's definitely quite a challenge. I thought I knew this so well. Okay, so I think it's through here. I think it's through there, through there. But yeah, it's not quite where I thought it was. That's not the bridge we're looking for, or is it? Oh, I think it is. Okay, yeah, I thought that was going to be so simple, but it just shows you it is pretty disorientating. Let me see if I can fine-tune that search. That's definitely quite embarrassing because this is about how well I figured all of this out. Trailhead Park. Timmy, can you get, sorry about that. I need to, I think, type in something here. Let's try again. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so now I'm a little bit better orientated, but you would imagine you'd know by now. So there's the Monon High Bridge Trail. That's not where they were dropped off, but that is one of the ways you approach. And it actually looks like they were, so the trail goes through here. Jeepers, it's so disorientating. There's Deer Creek. I guess it's this way. So we actually seeing this map upside down. This is the north side, should be on the other side. That's the south side. Let's see if I can turn this around a little bit more. Okay, so now we, I think, properly orientated. So that's where the trailhead starts. Timmy, just please give me a second. I think Timmy's really cold. Okay. Okay, so there the trail goes through there, right? And then probably where the bridge should be somewhere here. Well, I don't see the bridge. There's the bridge. Well, the bridge looks really weird in this image. Bridge looks really, really weird. Okay. So probably where the drop-off point was somewhere here. Like, can you see how close that road is to over there? Right? It's right over there. The drop-off point is there. So then they would just walk, instead of the drop-off point being there, it's over here. This is the north side. This is the side of town where Libby's family live. I think their home is somewhere around here, somewhere around this area. Okay. Richard lives somewhere over here, about a mile away, and Abby, I think, somewhere around here. I think Abby lives somewhere around there, Richard somewhere around there. So walking distance for Abby and Richard to the bridge coming from the south side, but Abby was staying on this side with Libby, and then they were dropped off coming down this road to about that point, and then dropped off over there. Then they walked this way, right? And then the question is also, where did Richard Allen come from? Like, which side did he come from? Did he walk from here? Did he drive to there? Or did he take some other route? But the fact is, they walked across here. Can you see? This is not really the best map. I mean, it's pretty incredible how bad this is. But can you see the bridge starts, and look how far it goes into the forest canopy. And so the whole idea is that Timmy, can I put you down? I know you're going to want to jump up again. Can you see how it starts over the first half of the river? Of the first half of the bridge crosses the river, then it goes over the forest canopy, right? And most of that is this side. Now, bridge guy wanted his victims not on this side of the bridge, because that's where all the public gather. Not all the public would cross this bridge. It's quite a rickety bridge to cross, and not everyone would want to do that. So by getting them onto this side of the bridge, he would basically disconnect them from this public area, right? The other side of this equation is, can you see in winter how thin these trees are? It doesn't really provide you with a proper covering, right? So you would also then want to get down from the bridge and away into into the forest, but it's still going to be difficult to see anything, right? That's the point. Timmy knows how to steal the show. Yeah, he's actually sitting at my foot right now. I hope that's gonna do it. Okay. It's such a desolate area. Okay. Right. So we've gotten through that. So as I said, on the Monday, they went from their grandparents' home north of Delphi, near Peru, near Keegan Klein's home, to the Monan High Bridge. That would be the shortest route. Had they needed to pick up Abby, the shortest route would have been from Richard Allen's side. What this suggests is that Richard Allen knew Libby, or Libby and Abby were coming from the north side, and he needed to corral them to the south side, which is more private. We're going to deal with Richard's route in a moment. I've really got to concentrate, so I'm going to take my dog to my bed where he'll be warm. So just give me a second. I'm struggling to concentrate with him licking me and everything. So just give me a second. Jimmy, come. Hey, come. Come, boy. Hey, come. Come. Out of bed. Hopefully that does the trick. Okay. Right. I'm back. Okay. Yeah, Timmy has been honing his distraction techniques. Okay. So let's continue. It is cold today. That's definitely part of it, and Timmy's been shaved. So now we're going to deal with victimology. Okay. So did you guys know that both victims were essentially fatherless? Did you guys know that Libby's parents, Libby was almost an orphan in a sense. And the reason for that is they had addiction problems, right? Okay, so I think I'm gonna get out of that. That's not how I like to do true crime analysis, is being so distracted and all over the place. Really not like how I like to do it. Okay, so in terms of Libby's parents, she didn't even live with her parents, she lived with her grandparents. And Abby's father's like not in the picture at all. If you even look at the funeral notice, the obituary notice, there's no mention of her father, right? So shall I read it quickly? She was born on June 23rd, 2003, to her mother, Anna M. Williams. Abby was an 8th grader at Delphi Community Middle School. She played saxophone. She was on the volleyball team. She attended several area churches with her family. She was an avid reader. She went on camping trips. She enjoyed animals. And then it says here, surviving mother Anna M. Williams of Delphi. No mention of her father. Maternal grandparents, maternal great-grandparents, maternal, nothing about paternal. Do you notice that? Quite interesting, isn't it? So that's the first thing to really highlight there. So that's Abby. Libby lived with her grandparents. When you see folks speaking on the victim's behalf, it tends to be either a sibling, Kelsey, German, or grandparents, but seldom a father figure, unless I missed something. Right. So in terms of this, you can actually see how they would be particularly vulnerable to some dude coming along that is in a way a brotherly figure, a fatherly figure, a male figure that definitely catches their imagination and their excitement, right? They need someone like that in their lives. They want someone like that in their lives. And at 13, 14 years of old, they're particularly vulnerable from the growing up perspective, right? Brianna says her father doesn't like the media, right? So from the perspective of a perpetrator, he may have asked, what does your dad do? Or do you have any brothers or sisters? It would suit a perpetrator that wants to commit a crime like this to not have male rivals or male attention or males running around trying to catch the perpetrator, right? In other words, it would suit a perpetrator to have young victims who don't have father figures. I'm talking about dropping them off or coming to pick them up or anything like that. Or even noticing what they're doing online, I guess, right? Does that make sense? So one does get a sense that they've been pre-selected. So I suspect the victims were pre-selected to not have fathers or older brothers in the immediate area, which would make the perpetrator's life easier, not only committing the crime, which perhaps took an extended time, but also during the aftermath. Although they had, this is where you need to have a bit of critical thinking, although they did have absent fathers, bear in mind that Liberty's father was supposed to pick them up at 3:15, right? So it's not like he was there wasn't any father in this fabric, just that there's a relatively fatherless landscape here. But Liberty's father was supposed to pick them up at 3:15, and this suggests that they themselves, Libby and Abby, anticipated the encounter with this effectively a stranger, someone they'd never met but knew online. They anticipated that encounter to take an hour. Does that make sense? That they thought that this experience would last an hour. Probably that's also as much time as their family would allow them to be in a situation like that, to their credit. So if you think about it in broad strokes, what this was about was being out in that environment for an hour, basically from 2 to 3, right? That is a good chunk of time, yeah. In another sense, it's quite a short chunk of time, because when that time's up, if you, the perpetrator, you need to get out of the area and you're on foot. So would you really go there on foot with a chance of bumping into dad or someone else on foot? And so that brings up this idea of, how did Bridgeman approach? Did he approach from the south, from his home, but on foot? Did he drive there by car, or did he come there by some other route, right? Earthkeeper says they went out there filled with hope and adventure. I also think there was maybe a drugs aspect involved, that maybe they wanted to smoke marijuana. Maybe the idea, now think about what you've just dealt with the Kylie Rodney case. What do you think the seniors were hoping to experience at their party? Certain things, but also having a experience like when you high, right? I think that was also part of that. Do you guys agree? Do you think that drugs could be part of this story? That part of the need to meet Anthony Shots was that he was saying, yeah, I've got some marijuana. Do you guys want some marijuana, right? So it has been asked, why was the alarm raised as early as 2.5 hours earlier, right? If you think about it, that's quite soon. That's quite soon to raise the alarm. Why was it raised so early? Any ideas on that? Any of you have any thoughts on why it was really a relatively short time to raise the alarm? That's interesting. Okay. Well, it's because, like Shanann Watts, Libby was one of those people who literally always has their phone with her. And when she didn't answer for an extended period, her sister, an extended period being 2 hours, her sister and her family were convinced something had happened to her, and they were right. So that's why it was relatively quick. But even though it was relatively quick, I don't think they found them until like the next day, which is a shame. Okay, so now we're going to deal with the VCS pharmacy. Have I got that right? Is it VCS? Just want to look at some of my images here. I think I've got an image of a dog in front of a pharmacy. Sorry, I must apologize again just for being quite fuzzy. I'm on really strong antibiotics, and I'm definitely not firing on all cylinders. I'm definitely off my game. CVS pharmacy, okay. Yeah, CVS, sorry. Good to be accurate. So anyway, let's change that. CVS. Okay, so in terms of this pharmacy and the drug connection, it's kind of an open question. Was there a drug connection? Why is it so small? Was there a drug connection or not? And it's the same question we kind of asked in the Kylie Rodney case. Was there alcohol? Was there drugs, right? So let's have a look at the possibilities here. Now, I really wish Stephanie was here to speak to this aspect directly. Stephanie happens to be, Stephanie's one of our mods on this channel, one of our scout leaders. She happens to do precisely what Richard Allen did. She's a pharmacy tech. And Stephanie reckons drugs play into the fabric of the crime somehow. It could be that the Anthony Shots profile suggested meeting them so that they could smoke marijuana together. It could be just that. Right? The other thing that's really interesting with Stephanie talking about Stephanie being a CVS, sorry, she doesn't work for CVS, but Stephanie being a pharmacy tech is she knows for a fact that she shadowed for a year. She worked in the pharmacy for a year before she qualified. And so there was a question, well, would Richard even worked in the pharmacy while he was studying? I think he only became licensed in 2018, the year after the crime. But it stands to reason that he was already working in the pharmacy, I guess, his first year. And this is the part that's really interesting, is what access, what knowledge would a pharmacy tech have about the personal lives, the folks in that community. What sort of level of access would they have to those people? And it's actually quite shocking. Stephanie says, I literally fill the description. Sorry, it should be prescription. I literally fill the prescription from the doctor from start to finish, including mixing antibiotics. Now, imagine a dodgy pharmacy tech. Imagine just the idea of a pharmacy tech that's a double murderer, that's dodgy, that is a predator of some kind. Just imagine that idea. A dodgy pharmacy tech, a pharmacy tech that's actually a wolf in sheep's clothing, a pharmacy tech that is living in plain sight, but is actually a monster. And he knows all the private medical history of a small town. He knows who's got cancer. He knows who has ADD. He knows who is on workers' compensation. He knows who's suffering from infertility. He knows who has sexual dysfunction. He knows who want regular prescriptions of sleeping pills. He knows whatever addiction somebody has. He knows about everything. He's got addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, all at his fingertips. That whole medical history is right there. It's pretty scary, isn't it? I'm not saying so much that he could take medication out the pharmacy and he was doing that. I'm talking about having knowledge of family relationships and dysfunctional families. And for example, Libby was from a dysfunctional family where her parents were addicts. Wouldn't he have known that? Wouldn't he have taken advantage of that because of that insight? So Titanic Discussions, thanks so much. Greetings. Is it wrong to want to physically dispose of whoever did this? I think it's right to be angry. I think it's right to be, to be actually furious that someone was living in plain sight who was basically a predator, someone who's taking advantage of virtually that entire town, and also taking advantage of their ignorance, right? So it's not wrong to be angry, but I think one's got to be a bit like Batman. You've got to not allow the dark impulse that took over him to take over you, right? You've got to, like Batman's one rule is he will never kill anyone. So that should be your one rule as well, right? I mean, you should want justice, and we should, I think, be quite upset by how long it's taken. I don't think it should have taken so long. And that's why this live is dealing with, couldn't they see the woods for the trees? We're going to deal with that aspect. Like, why did it take so long? Holly Golightly says, I worked as a pharmacy through college, and you learn a lot. Yeah, you do. Yep. Sharon says, drugs are not anything to do with the case. The other possibility is that he was addicted in some way as well. We know that he was a recovering alcoholic. So that could be an aspect. Another thing is he could, if you think about he wants to commit a crime, is it possible that he could do something to his family members where they are less alert than usual? Maybe put some sleeping pill or something in their food that just makes them less alert than usual. Or when they start asking questions, he maybe does that as a way of controlling those around him. I do think it's very, you've got to be very careful looking at someone's job and saying, oh, that's totally irrelevant. I don't think it's got anything to do with it. It's very relevant. In fact, you've got to look at all the ways that it could be relevant. Daniela says, is there a connection between Richard Allen and Keegan Klein? Well, that's why I played that clip right at the beginning from News Nation. It looks like there is. Looks like there is. Okay, so let's continue. By the way, while I was chatting to Stephanie about all of this, she let me know that her sister's actually has a doctorate in pharmacy. So Stephanie and her family are no slouches. That requires 6 years of education. It's quite incredible. By the way, if I can blow my family's trumpet, my brother's just got his M degree in artificial intelligence. He's actually got 2 degrees, one in civil engineering, one in electromechanical, but he's now got his master's in artificial intelligence. Just got it just the other day. So kudos to him. So now we're going to deal with orientation. Let's go to that. So I must say, if you've committed a crime and you want to know what people are thinking and how they're reacting, working in a pharmacy, you could do worse than that. I think a hairdresser would also give you a lot of access to what are the communities saying and thinking, a taxi driver as well, but a pharmacy where some people who are dealing with their mental health, they would come there as well. Definitely is quite, I think, important. Thanks, Terry. Okay, so now we're going to deal with this aspect. I think I'm going to do it like that. Okay, now we're going to go back to orientation. I'm going to do it like that. Okay. So I believe thanks to Lisa's and Stephanie's assistance, they've really educated me. I understand the orientation aspect better in terms of the route to and from the bridge and to the crime scene, right? And what I mean by that is what has actually happened here. I think I'm going to have to close a window. Just a second. Yeah, so you have nosy neighbors. So while you're doing a live stream, a neighbor just happens to be standing right under your window, and they're like, "Oh, what? I wonder what he's talking about. I think I'll just stand here for a long time." Just it's a bit of a Halloween level live stream for me, with my dog doing his thing and the neighbor doing their thing. Anyway, in terms of the orientation, the part I just want to emphasize is it's a situation where, as I said, Abby and Libby are coming from the far side, the north side, right? They cross this really long bridge. It's really easy to underestimate the length of this bridge. It's a difficult bridge to walk over. It's rickety. I think someone was telling me that you don't want to be too many people walking over the bridge at the same time because it literally does that, right? So it's a lot longer bridge than it actually looks in a lot of the photos. A really, really long bridge, and it's rickety and dangerous. Some of the wood is sort of rounded, and the idea that that bridge guy is limping or something, it's actually not really so. The wood is so kind of unstable, and the footing is so unstable that any normal person is going to walk in a sort of odd way. You're not necessarily going to look like you're limping. Although if you're an overweight guy, you're going to shuffle in a certain way. If you're a thin, nimble teenager, you might sort of dance your way across in a way. But the point is, once you're across, it's going to be very difficult, and it's going to take a long time for other people to come across as well. So in other words, once you cross that bridge, in a way you're disconnected from the public on the other side that can come to your safety. And that is exactly what Bridge Guy wanted. He wanted his victims out of the safety net of the public on the other side. But then that wasn't enough. He had to then take them away, through the woods from that side, where it would be totally invisible. In other words, what he needs there is also to be out of earshot. He doesn't want screams to be heard. He doesn't want all that furtive activity to be seen, right? And also he needs to get the crime scene off the beaten track. Maybe also he wanted to associate the victims with the Logan dude, the guy who was living there. Maybe he thought that would implicate him, right? That's another aspect to it. So that sort of brings up the idea of where did Bridge Guy come from in the situation? So we know that he was actually coming from the opposite side. He was coming also from the north side, but he lived on the south side. So the question is, how did he get there? Did he walk from his home, cross the river? I don't think he would have crossed the bridge and then crossed again. Did he walk from his home and then sort of hike into that area from the south? Or, and this is what I think he did, or did he drive there and park near the cemetery, and just like Abby and Libby, also cut through, not go on the public route, but kind of cut through a section of it? That would allow him to get out of there from very close to where the crime scene was, right? Get back to his vehicle and drive away. The other thing to bear in mind is, imagine if Libby's father arrived earlier and he was looking for Libby, right? And he actually caught Bridge Guy in the act, caught him in flagrante delicto, right? Caught him red-handed. How would he get out of there? Well, it wouldn't be very good if he needed to run all the way home from that point, almost 2 miles. Instead, if it was a short trip to his vehicle and he drove off, that would also make sense. The other thing is, would you want to direct people to say, well, I've committed the crime near my home, on the side of the river where my home is, and then I walked home and people saw me walking home? Well, that's gonna direct attention. So to misdirect them, you commit the crime on the other, or you leave the bodies on the other side of the creek, right? Then you get into a vehicle on the other side of the creek and you drive away on the other side of the creek. If anyone sees you, they'd say, I don't think he lived on the south side. I think he must have lived on the north side. Does that make sense? So let's do a quick poll now. How many of you think that he arrived with a vehicle and cut through near the cemetery, which is a very short distance to where the crime scene was, and then when after the crime went to his vehicle and drove off? How many of you think that that's the case? So if you think it does, just say yes. If not, say no. Let's just have a look at Anne Ruben says no, he lived south of the bridge. That it is a theory, it is speculation. Let's see what you guys say. I'm going to see if I can bring up some other images. I think that's possible. Okay. So Terry Dean says no. Okay, Terry Dean, what do you think happened? So quite a few yeses. John says no, his leg pants are dry. But that's okay. I'm not quite sure I'm following you. His leg pants are dry, yeah, but if he drove from the other side, right? If he drove from the other side, his leg pants would still be dry because he's coming from that side anyway. Brianna says, I'm not convinced on the motive. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I'm suggesting. Did he park near the ranch? But that is definitely an area, whatever you say, that's definitely an area that we just don't know. We don't know where he came from. We don't know whether he came by car. We don't know whether he hiked. We don't know the route that he came. That's kind of a mysterious element to this. What we do know, and I'm pleased that I can sort of say this now, is When I first saw this image that you see next to me, I thought that was the girls had arrived early and they were standing kind of near the edge of the bridge and walking a little bit on it and kind of feeling, wow, this is kind of dangerous. I'm not going to go any further. In reality, that this is near the other end of the bridge. And it does feel like Libby took this photo to say, we here. You asked to meet us on the far side of the bridge, we here, right? And then the next thing, Bridge Guy did emerge. And it does also make you wonder, did Bridge Guy have his phone with him to see that they were there, right? Did Bridge Guy have his phone with him? Because he's also got to continue to interact with them. So the part that is so difficult to figure out if you're new to this case is, can you see there are little idiosyncrasies to the bridge, these little platforms jutting out? And so you might think, oh, there's that platform over there, so now I know on which side it is, but both sides of the bridge have got those platforms. The best way to tell the difference between one side of the bridge and the other is the river. The river is on the north side of the bridge where the trailhead is, the public trailhead, right? And the side where they're walking over land, which is the side that Abby is on now and Libby's taking the photo from, is the south side, which is where Richard lived. And Bridge Guy later on came from this angle, which is why pretty much where Libby's standing is where Bridge Guy would later be seen walking along this sort of section. I think she was maybe standing a little bit more on that side. But the point is, Libby and Abby were on the far side of the bridge, having crossed the bridge, which trapped them. If they were on the other side, they could have just run away, run back to safety, and hopefully run into a member of the public. On this side, there's no chance of that. On this side, had they wanted to escape, they would have to pass Bridge Guy, right? Does that make sense? They would have to pass Bridge Guy. And the other thing is they would have to get all the way across the bridge without Bridge Guy grabbing hold of them, right? They wouldn't be able to easily run away. Also, once they were down the hill, they would have to run across the river to get away from him as well. So this was a way of isolating them and him from the public, from this public access point. And he would then move them that way. Down the hill would be that way. Does that make sense? Terry says, excellent theories and questions in chat. Let me see if I can see what some of you guys are saying. Was it a possible ambush? They send away the form to be developed, just handle the process. That's the other thing is, as a pharmacy technician, he would also be handling photographs, so you could see what families were made of. You could see family photographs. You could see Christmas photos, who's part of the family and who isn't, right? Well, I really do not look so well. Really don't look well at all. Anyway, okay. Anne says there are numerous ways to get to the southeast end of the high bridge without crossing the bridge. Okay. Certified Quality says, what is the reason he killed them? Well, probably he wanted to perform some sort of essay, right? If it is Richard Allen, it's a 50-year-old, sorry, he was 45 at the time. So 45-year-old father married with a job, and they would be witnesses otherwise. They would they would say he did this, and they would probably be able to identify him, and then he would lose his life. So it was either, so it's like he wants his sexual gratification and he wants to get away with it. So in other words, they paid the price of their lives in order that he could have a sexual experience. That's the reason. What is the reason why they couldn't escape running away? Well, he probably took out a gun. Tim Green, I think the girls arranged to meet Anthony somewhere on the trail. When Alan was there instead, they panicked. It's looking quite clear that Richard Allen had access or use of the Anthony Shots profile. We know multiple people did. It looks like he was one of them. Yeah, definitely dangerous liaisons. Okay, so now I want to deal with something that's a little bit different. Why did law enforcement take so long to catch this person? Now, I mentioned earlier that in the build-up to the live yesterday, well, today, some of your time, I don't actually know if it's anyone's time anymore. I think everywhere in the world it's now the 1st of November. Isn't it saying somewhere, remember the 1st of November? Anyway, someone said in the lead up to the press conference, why did Kathy take so long to, why didn't Kathy realize that her husband was the suspect? And I want to deal with that now. So let me bring up, I must say this is a beautiful image of that bridge. And here you get quite a clear idea of the creek is directly below. And then look how far it goes into, that is not the end of the bridge. The bridge continues through and under and into the forest canopy, right? But a lot of people wouldn't go further than this. A lot of the public wouldn't go further than this point because the bridge is old, rickety, and you literally see dozens of feet down while you're walking across the bridge, which makes it quite scary. Okay, let me try and bring up another. So there's the image that's used for the title slide. You can see how it goes into that forest canopy. There you see some of those side platforms, right? Okay, I'm trying to find particular image, see if I can maybe put that one up for the time being. Yeah, so the quality was shocking. It broke off quite a few times, but it didn't really matter because nothing was really said. But I want to deal with this whole idea of how did Kathy Allen not know, right? So I've got to say, several years ago when I was covering other cases, every now and then people ask me, because I've written quite a lot of books on true crime, people ask me, please, Nick, look into the DELPHI case. And the part that annoyed me was, hold on, they've got audio and video and they still can't find him, right? That was kind of my response. I was sort of working on other cases and I was like, how is it that they can't find this person, right? And the main reason why I didn't deal with the DELPHI case was I felt like the fact that they're not providing any details of the crime scene or very little and no autopsy, it was very hard to begin to know where to work on this. So my issue isn't so much with Kathy, like why didn't Kathy know? Although I'm not offering her a pass at all. My issue is that this case once again confirms how lousy we are at figuring out reality, even when we're gifted with so much evidence. So there are a lot of people who are angry. There are a lot of people who are angry with Kathy or with the sheriff. I don't know, are you guys angry? Who are you with? Right? Yeah, but even so, mine is no autopsy. If you're trying to investigate it, I mean, John Benet Ramsey, the autopsy came out quite early on. If you're trying to investigate that, not having that's going to really tie your hands, right? So my issue isn't really so much with Kathy. It's to say, why are we, the collective we, law enforcement, the community in Delphi, even a lot of the folks in true crime looking at this, and I include myself, why are we so bad at figuring out reality? I mean, it's taken me 2 or 3 days to figure out the bridge and where Bridge Guy came in. And to me, that's question number one. Question one is, where did Bridge Guy come from, and where did Bridge Guy leave to or leave from as well? And it's like, why is this such a complicated question? Why isn't it absolutely clear? Why isn't it part of the media fabric? Why haven't law enforcement brought out maps saying this is what we believe? It's like, so in any event, the verbal says, saving my anger for what? Let's just look at some of your comments. I think it's because there's more than one involved. That's definitely a theory. I think there's substance to that, in that social media may be shared, but I don't know whether in terms of the crime scene itself, there were two people. I personally don't think so. Beverly Loy says, I would have spotted Alan, especially if he was my husband. Okay. So anyway, this is my my position. By the collective we, I mean those close to Alan. Why didn't anyone recognize him? And I think it's a question you've got to take seriously, right? Because I think it's a question you've got to take seriously. You don't just say it rhetorically, and you don't just throw it out there. I think you need to ask the question and answer it. So I want to bring up another image. Let's make it this one. Why didn't anyone recognize him? And I'm going to go into this area quite boldly, quite stridently. I'm not going to kind of pussyfoot around this particular question. Why didn't anyone recognize him? So literally answer the question. Why didn't anyone recognize him, right? Okay. Probably because they were in denial and it suited them, right? Let me say that again. Why didn't anyone recognize him? Well, answer, probably because they were in denial and it suited them. Now, you might think I'm referring to family members, and it could refer to them, but it could also refer to many of the residents of Delphi. It could also refer to the some people in law enforcement. It could also refer to people in the media. And I don't mean this in a nasty way, like you were evil or you had an evil agenda. I mean, this guy seemed to take advantage of people's psychological weakness. This guy seemed to benefit, thrive because of people's stubborn psychology. And we're going to talk about that psychology right now. How were people in denial, right? The bigger question to me is, I think that folks didn't recognize Alan because they were looking for someone else. So why couldn't they see Alan? Well, it's because they were looking for someone specific, right? Why didn't they see someone? Because they were looking for someone else. Let me explain what I mean. They were looking for some obviously sleazy offender with a long criminal record. That's who they were looking for. Not a decent pharmacy technician, not someone with a wife and kid and job, and who lives in the suburbs. They were looking for some sleaze bag, but that's all they were looking for. They were only looking for a sleaze bag. They were looking for someone who looked like this. They were looking for someone who looked like that. They were looking for someone who looked like that. Right? They weren't looking for someone who looked like this. Well, I mean, now they are, because I mean he's now in his prison garb, but they weren't looking for someone who basically appeared to have a decent job and a decent life. They thought that this person that you can't really see, they thought that this person that you can't really see didn't have some sort of proper life, that everything about him was evil, right? They thought that this guy, just want to bring up another image, basically looked like that or looked like that. So in other words, was a very sleazy, despicable character. Isn't that why they didn't recognize him? In other words, is living in plain sight. Should we not also look for someone living in plain sight in Delphi? So do you see where I'm coming from? So I think they were looking for some obviously sleazy offender with a long criminal record. They weren't looking for just someone who's become a deviant within the fabric of society. And I think there are many. Okay, my dog has just gotten his mojo back. Let me just get my dog back. Hold on. Some of you warmed up. Okay, you can continue harassing me now, Timmy. Come up. I think my dog has got a bit of an attachment disorder. Anyway, if I go overseas, it's going to be tough for him, me being away for a while. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry about how somewhat chaotic this live is. Okay, so why didn't anyone recognize him? I've got to tell you, I didn't cover the Delphi case from the beginning. So I didn't really know this, but I suspected it. When I came to it now, I thought, I wondered. So how did the community approach this investigation? How did the media approach it? And so I wasn't surprised to see this. I think I'll put a link to that in the description. Can you guys see that? That's from the Herald Journal. It's although it says October 31st over there, it's actually from March 19, 2017. So this is very close to, this is less than a month after the crime had actually happened. Do you see there? Cleared 2,000 tips, checked all registered SA people, right? So you say, why didn't anyone recognize him? Well, because they were searching for SA folks. That was what the fixation was on. And at the time that they were, at the time that Adventures with Purpose found Kylie Rodney, law enforcement was searching for SAs as well. We seem to be fixated as a society on SAs, on these offenders, and we think everything is an SA or some kind of offender, because that's the kind of shocking news that makes the news. But there's also other people who are not good people in our society. There are also bad people in society that aren't explicitly, overtly bad people. And I don't know whether it's from watching too much TV or movies that we think a bad person looks like a bad person. A good person looks like a good person. A handsome person is good. An ugly person is bad. It's a very simplistic way of looking at things. And then we are so surprised that there's a monster living in plain sight, which is exactly what Jeffrey Dahmer was, exactly what Chris Watts was, exactly what Bridge Guy was, as it appears. Sharon says, if my husband owned that coat, I would recognize it immediately. So that's the first thing to mention, is that the media was also just saying what law enforcement were doing. So law enforcement are only looking at offenders, right? S offenders. So the media are only talking about S offenders. So the public are only thinking about S offenders. And so you can imagine Kathy Allen is thinking, well, my husband isn't an S offender as far as I know, so I'm not really worried. His daughter may be thinking the same thing. My dad's got a job. It's not him. I'm sure the thought passed her mind. But the fixation of the entire society saying, we must look for an S offender. Well, that's why you're not going to find him. So you're going to continue looking for an S offender in 2018, but then you still don't find him. Then you continue looking in 2019, and so on, right? Do you keep banging your head against the wall, but then you just keep looking in the same way? When you don't find anything, you just keep going? Or do you have the scout mindset where you say, let's be curious, instead of saying, I know it's this particular kind of offender, maybe it could be anyone. And if you acknowledge that it could be anyone, maybe that's going to get you to find the person sooner. So don't kind of dictate your own psychological narrative. Don't dictate your own investigation by narrowing it to just S offender. Say, well, let's first think and be curious and look at our community and look at who's in the community. And it could be anyone. Not, no, let's just look through the keyhole of an S offender. So if you say, why did it take so long to catch them? Well, because you were fixated on your own idea of who you thought the perpetrator was. The media was as well, right? By March 9, less than a month after the murders, the cops have swept through all the registered SOs in Carroll County. You would think that would lead to a change of strategy. You'd think, oh, great, okay, you've gone through all the SOs, right? SOs commit SA. You would think that having gone through everyone in Carroll County, you'd stop there. You'd say, okay, now let's have a change of strategy. Well, you know what they did? They then said, okay, let's go beyond Carroll County. Let's go to the rest of the state. Let's go out of state. Let's go all the way to Colorado. Let's go through the rest of America. Maybe you should go back to the drawing board in March and start looking in Delphi. Not, I can't find an SO here, so I'll go to wherever I can find SOs, and I'll go through all the SOs in America. Okay, so I hope I'm not sounding too kind of emotional. So as I say, instead of changing their strategy, the cops simply started to sweep for SOs beyond Carroll County. And by September, they were looking as far as Colorado for a suspect. Do you guys remember? Do you remember Daniel Nations? Do you remember Daniel Nations? We think it's him. And probably when they saw Daniel Nations, they thought, he doesn't really look very overweight, but he fits the profile, so it could be him. Timmy, I'm going to put you down again. Okay. In other words, can you see how you seeing what you want to see? You're not seeing what is actually there. You're not actually curious. You are dictating your own psychological narrative, right? So by January of 2019, the SO offender narrative was still dictating the narrative. We're now 2 years later, 2 full years later. This is January 2019. Look at this headline. Let me put a link to that in chat. Shall I bring up the whole thing? This is from the Daily Mail. Okay, so let's take that away. So it says accused. You can see the word there. He looks like a sketch of the suspected murderer, and he was obsessed with hiding in the woods. He was a violent weirdo. That's who they're looking for, a violent weirdo. And this is that particular guy. And I showed you a picture of him earlier, right? It's this guy. That's who they were looking for in 2019, a weirdo. There's another picture of him. Does that look like him? Does that look like the other picture of him? I want to just show you these other pictures of him. These are other pictures of him. So that's who they thought they're looking for. They're looking for a weirdo. They're looking for someone who's obviously kind of a deviant. It must be obvious. They're looking for an obvious bad guy. And they just can't find him. So they find this guy, and it turns out, well, it's not him either. So they try and find another obvious bad guy. Then it's not him. Then they try and look for another obvious bad guy. And then the question is again, why aren't you finding the person responsible? Because you must stop doing what you think is obvious and do the thing that's less obvious. So in hindsight, can you see the obvious reason why the cops couldn't find or catch Richard Allen? Can you see the obvious reason why his own family didn't think Richard was guilty of anything? Because his own family are hearing, well, we're looking for a weirdo. My dad's not weird. My husband's not weird, not obviously weird. Because everyone was programmed to look for an obvious SO. Because he needed to look menacing. And have an alarming criminal backstory. And if it doesn't fit that narrative, then I don't know. Does that make sense? The reason why they couldn't see him or catch him is because everyone had programmed themselves just to see one thing, an SO, not a member of society that is hiding in plain sight. So you can imagine Richard Allen working in a pharmacy, kind of going, well, these people are nowhere near to finding me because they're looking for an obvious weirdo. So all I've got to do is continue to behave normally. All I've got to do is be a nice guy, and then they're never going to suspect me. As easy as that. As easy as effing that. I've just got to be nice, act nice, and no one's going to think it's me because they're looking for a not nice, an obviously not nice person. If you just think about how easy it is to fool so many people, that's what makes me angry. It's like, can't we be smarter than that? But it's not even weirdos. It's bear in mind that all of us are capable of being weirdos. All of us are capable of a certain amount of criminality. And the fact is, you wanted to look at inside Delphi, not go to Colorado and maybe even to Hawaii to try and find the last remaining SO in America. Would you go beyond America then? Maybe you go to Europe and then I don't know, where do you stop? When do you finally, like you literally had that with Madeleine McCann. Instead of trying to find what happened, they were looking for SOs throughout Europe, literally. And then they did literally start looking around the world. And then meanwhile, the dogs alerted inside the apartment. Because you're fixated on an idea. You've been programmed to think about an idea. Same thing with John Benet Ramsey. Exact same thing. So let's talk about that I'll put them side by side. What is the difference between these two men? What's the difference between those two men? What's the difference? No, I don't think he could be a serial killer. DNA, I agree. I think will be the trump card. What do you think that? No. I don't mean the physical difference. I mean, ultimately, what's the difference between these two people? Well, the one is living a lie, like he's pretending to be a nice guy, right, with a nice job and a nice family, but he's hiding a secret. The other one was less good at that. That's the main difference. The one guy's keeping a secret in a very good way, in a clever way, in a very convincing way, and the other one's not keeping that secret so well. But ultimately, there's not much of a difference between them. They're both interested in the same thing. They're both doing something similar, or it appears that way. Okay. Some of you making some I think silly comments there, but anyway. Do you think that the cops had a scout mindset, or did they have a we are only looking at SO mindset? We are only, I wish I could say the word, but we are only looking at, let me put it in chat. We are only looking for blah, blah, blah mindset. And so does someone working in a pharmacy fit that mindset? It could be anybody, it could be everybody, but they started thinking it can only be obvious weirdos. And Keegan Kline, I think, fit that profile. He's an obvious weirdo. Richard Allen isn't an obvious weirdo. But we can't catch the guy that did this. Well, maybe it's because he's not an obvious weirdo. So if after 1 year fixating on SOs and you don't find anyone, do you just carry on looking? Then you look, it brings you to year 2 and year 3 and year 4. You just keep looking for weirdos. After 4 years, it might gradually dawn on you that your investigative psychology is kind of a caged bias. But I don't want to admit I made a mistake. Let's keep looking for weirdos. We'll eventually catch the weirdo. And there is an aspect to this that is right. He is a weirdo. He's just not obviously and explicitly a weirdo. He's a weirdo hiding his weirdo-ness, just like Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, well, not that I don't want to say that he wasn't a weirdo, but he was a homosexual, and he was just hiding that. That was really what all of that macabre nonsense was about, was he was just trying to hide the fact that he was a homosexual. Part of it was also that he had problems with intimacy, and he couldn't have intimacy if somebody spoke to him or interrupted his fantasy. He needed total control. So there was that as well, but it was basically, it started with, I'm a homosexual and I really can't come to terms with that. If he could have come to terms with that, it would have been fine. But that's homosexuality. I mean, that's one thing. Wanting certain interactions with underage people, that's something else. That's something that if someone has that problem, they've got to keep that a secret. It's a taboo, it's not healthy, it's illegal, but they nevertheless, I guess, have those feelings, right? They nevertheless have those feelings. So they are right to be looking for a weirdo, but it might not be a obvious weirdo. There might be quite a few weirdos like that that are apparently normal members of society. Okay. That psychology of we want to look for an obvious weirdo, the guy on the right, not the guy on the left, that suited Richard Allen to a T. We're looking for someone who's an obvious monster. He's an outcast. He doesn't have kids. He's divorced, or he's some kind of I don't know, like tramp, or some itinerant fellow, someone who's unemployed, some kind of loser who's preying on society and preying on kids in society. Could it not be an upstanding person as well? Okay, Timmy's still waiting at my leg. Okay, so let me bring you up over here. So I'm going to just kind of read through the script. Where are we now? We're at an hour 36. I'm just going to read through the script and get to the end of my spiel here. You can almost hear Richard Allen chuckling. By all means, guys, keep looking for obvious perverts, and I will have nothing to worry about. As long as I keep my nose clean and I seem like this nice pharmacy dude, I don't really have to worry about it. You guys are going to keep focused and fixating on one thing, and you're just not going to stop. And after 4 years, Richard could probably be forgiven for thinking the cops were never going to find him, because they weren't looking for an ordinary dude living in plain sight. They were looking for an obvious deviant. I've said that now so many times. If you think about it, it's a similar scenario to the Kylie Rodney case, except that it's obviously foul play. Obviously, you can't say in this case that there was anything but foul play. The question is, how foul is the player in the Delphi case, right? But folks want to believe the player, because I think of what's going on in true crime and in just the way we are. We always want to believe something is worse than it really is. So we want to believe the player is extremely foul. He can't just be somewhat foul. And so the fixated focus is so much on a SO that it blinds them to all other possibilities. I mean, instead of searching Colorado for someone you've recorded on video, just think about that. I want to go to search for someone in Colorado. We've got video footage of this guy. We've got his voice. Let's go to Colorado and look for him. Instead of that, maybe you want to look in a 2 to 3 mile radius around the bridge. Easier to say now, you might say, but just look in a 2-3 mile radius around the bridge and simply find out which men 18 to 50 are stocky, short, and live in the area, and try and examine their browser histories. Right? Pearl Harper says, I don't agree. Carter made it clear to look at everyone. So why did he not catch someone who's right there? Why did it take 5 years? So I've been bleating on the sidelines about how god-awful we are at interpreting reality. And what this case confirms is just how bad we are at it. So if you take Pearl's position, you say, I don't agree. I think we're very good at reality. I think we are, what's the word? I think we're actually good enough. It's fine. If you take that position, then there's no way we're going to improve. If you take that position that we didn't do anything wrong or nobody did anything wrong, we're not going to improve. If you take the position where you say, I actually think mistakes were made, I actually think we could do better, I actually think we should think about what we don't know. We should be curious about what we don't know and what we're not doing and what we should be doing. Then you can be more effective. You can become more effective. You might find the answer sooner than you do. If you say everything we're doing is right, we're not making mistakes, we are good enough, we are effective, well, then expect to have cases like this happen in future that take 5 years to solve or never solved, right? If you insist that we are not, we don't have any problem dealing with reality, we are experts at seeing reality, we can look at these maps and know exactly where we are, like that, then we're not going to learn anything and we're going to never solve anything. But if you say, like I did, well, this is getting quite complicated, I'm actually not sure what I'm seeing here, I'm actually confused. If you can be honest about your confusion, you might find your way, you might start to navigate and orient yourself much sooner. So in this case, if law enforcement had said, wow, we've been looking for SOs for so long, maybe you should have a change of strategy. Well, you know what? They did have a change of strategy. I don't know if that change of strategy was social media. I don't know if it was. I imagine it was. But if there was never a change of strategy, they would never have caught Richard Allen. Let me say that again. There was not a change of strategy, they would never have caught him. And so changing your strategy is, when something's not working, is smart. It's effective. It's showing you can adapt to reality, not bending to your psychology, because it's reality is what it is. You are looking in the wrong place. Okay. Now, it's the same psychology of always imagining a crime and the criminal to be worse than it really is. That is the stock and trade right now of true crime. You might say again, what is wrong with just speculating? Why can't we just speculate? Because you're always imagining it to be worse than it is. You're not imagining it the way it really is, right? You've got a lot of true crime channels out there that keep feeding this desire. I want something sensationalized. I want something shocking. I want something more exciting than it really is. Well, what does that teach you? It teaches you to look for something more shocking than it really is. It teaches you to look for something that's exciting and worse and whatever. It doesn't teach you to see reality. It's not teaching you to see reality. It's actually teaching you to not see reality. It's not a good education. It's not good. In the Ramsey case, it can't be a family member. It has to be some crazed intruder. It's got to be Santa Claus or some elaborate criminal from Thailand. In the Madeleine McCann case, it can't be an accidental fault. There's got to be some elaborate pedo ring operating in the area. In the Rodney case, she's got to be trafficked. Isn't reality hard or bad enough? Isn't reality hard or bad enough that we've got to make it worse? It's got to be even more shocking. When you hear that Richard Allen developed the funeral photos at the CVS pharmacy, you can imagine how thrilling that was for him and how smart he thought he was. He was living a lie, and look how easy it was. It was so easy precisely because people are so distracted and pig-headed. If you think I'm being unkind or unfair, right? I'm saying all of us are being pig-headed, not some of us, all of us. Imagine if you're a 13, but if you think that's unfair, imagine you're a 13-year-old girl. Let me bring that up. So do you see the words there? Isn't reality hard or bad enough? Wasn't the reality hard or bad enough for Libby? Wasn't reality hard or bad enough for Abby? That the living have got to make it worse. Imagine you're a 13-year-old victim lying in the dirt, crying out for justice. Imagine you're a 14-year-old stuck at that age for eternity, trembling in the dirt, wishing that the video that you took a video, you recorded the audio, wishing that would lead people to the perpetrator, who is right fucking there in plain sight. And what is she thinking? Why don't they see him? She must ask. Well, why don't we? Why don't we see him? When we look across this bridge, what do we see? Are we still capable of seeing? Can we see what is there, or do we simply see what we're programmed to see? That's my spiel. That's really the message I had for you guys. Let's look at some of your comments. Natty B, hi from New Zealand. Good to have you here. Songbird says yes, yes, yes. Certified Quality says we don't know what the what the weapon was. We do know there was a lot of blood. We can also intuit that probably there was a firearm. Paul Ward says we have to detach from popular opinions to see the trees. Well, no, we've got to, I see where you're coming from, but you've got to detach to see the woods. This is really about seeing the woods. So everyone is getting caught up in the trees, and we need to see the woods, right? We need to see the entire forest, and so how I approach this, Timmy, can I again put you on the ground? I mean, you can ask to jump on my lap again after 5 minutes. So when you talk about this idea of seeing the woods for the trees, this whole idea of mapping and saying, what side did the girls come from? What side did Bridge Guy come from? What side did he leave? That's trying to see the entire woods. That's trying to see the big picture, but also being able to see the movements within that big picture. This is literally a case of getting lost in the trees, of not seeing the woods for the trees. And I've just taken you through the literal translation of that, where law enforcement, the investigation got lost in the trees of an SO, rather than saying, let's keep an open mind and look at the folks in Delphi and look at that aspect. I mean, a very simple thing you could have looked at is someone who's interested in hiking, someone who hikes regularly. Excuse me, right? Someone who hikes regularly, it does seem like this was a guy who hiked and who used his hiking knowledge to his benefit, right? Let's have a look at some of your comments. Have you guys found this discussion interesting? I mean, I didn't know about the fatherless aspect. I'd underappreciated the potential for someone who works in a pharmacy. If you think about it, if you think about a dodgy pharmacy technician, they could theoretically mix medications for law enforcement families in ways that's going to compromise them even further. If you think about it like that, in a very Stephen King way, I've never really thought about that possibility, that a pharmacy technician in a small town could, in a way, pull a lot of strings just through that, by putting medications into the fabric around him. And not only that, just by knowing which medications are going in, he would know what is going on, the ebb and sway of those people. He would know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're going through. All the photo processing would also be giving unique insights into certain family dynamics, which could lead to perpetrating certain crimes. Wasn't there a movie or I remember something on television where there's a perpetrator who they eventually found did develop photos, and and he began by looking at the photos. Then he would go to their houses and look. I'm trying to think where I saw this. Anyway, he would look into their gardens, and then he eventually started committing crimes because he wanted to be part of these families. 2-hour photo. Yeah, I think it was that. So one wonders to what extent he didn't feel that way, that he wanted access to certain people. Yeah. Thanks for that, LEB. Yeah, it's a Robin Williams movie. Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. I hope you found all of this interesting. Do you feel that you know the area better, or do I need to go through it again? I don't really want to go longer than 2 hours, but you guys feel like you know the woods better and you orientated better. So just to reiterate, I think that the girls arrived from the north, from the public side. They walked from the north side, crossed all the way across the bridge to the south side. Bridge guy then also approached from the north and had them captured and controlled because of that, right? And that was the strategy all along, was to get them onto the south side by coming from the north side, him also coming from the north side, and then taking them along the south side away from the bridge, which would be away from earshot for anyone sort of in the area. And then he would move possibly to where he had a vehicle, closer to a vehicle, and also to private property to perhaps implicate the person who lived there, right? Could be all of those things. Paul Ward says, got it now. I had trouble understanding the topography. Valentin says, please hit like on the way out. I have got a ticker on the bottom. If you're not following me on Twitter, make sure that you do. Holly says, thanks for that. Pleasure. Elena, thank you as well. Tim Green says, in the 2019 police press conference, he spoke of watching a movie called The Shack, and he directed that comment to the killer. Interesting. Okay, so I want to encourage you all to go to sleep. If you're in America, guys, time to grab a pillow. Those in New Zealand, Australia, my side of the world, the UK, Europe, hope you have a wonderful day. It's mid-morning where I am. Not a terribly nice day, quite windy, quite cold. I think there's been a big fire because there's a smell, a burnt plastic sort of smell, a burnt smell in the air. I think there's some sort of fire that's burning somewhere. It actually woke me up in the middle of the night. But I hope this has clarified certain issues for you. But in particular, that question, why did it take so long? And why didn't Kathy, why didn't she realize who her husband was? I think that same question applies to all of us. Why can we not see reality? Well, it's because you're not looking for it, because you're not looking at it, or you're not open to it. Your psychology has caged your thinking. And the only way that you can start seeing reality, and it's important that you do, is by being curious, is by having the scout mindset, right? If you're not sure what it is, buy this book, right? Julia Galef, The Scout Mindset. Train yourself to be curious. Train yourself not to be captured by groupthink. Not to speculate on exciting possibilities that are unrealistic. Rather, anchor your curiosity in reality. It's going to be good for you, good for your life. It'll make you an important member of society, someone who's a truth teller, someone who sees reality for what it is. Not one of so many people around us who don't see what is there. They see what they want to see, and they don't know it. They don't know they are just seeing what they want to see. That's the world we live in now. Social media has really brought that about. Let's all be told what we want to hear. Let's all see what we want to see. But can you see that is happening? see the woods, not the trees. Are you one of those? Are you one of those that can see the woods, not the trees? One of you that don't get lost in the trees? That's how we solve true crime, is seeing the woods at last. Being able to see the face of this monster is seeing the woods, seeing what happened in the woods. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. It's the 1st of November, another month. This year has gone by quite quickly. It's definitely been a tough year for me. I hope it's going to start becoming a better year before the end of the year. GMA says 3:40 a.m. in Alabama. You must go to sleep. And I hope you have a good sleep. I hope you have a good rest. I hope you wake up feeling rejuvenated. Karina says mid-morning in Austria. That's where we are right now. But it was about catching the guy for 5 years. Now it's not about catching the guy. It's about prosecuting the guy. Okay. Wherever you are, take care. I hope I'm going to feel better. I hope you guys sleep well and also wake up feeling good. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for the mods, members, and subs. Good to have you guys here. Take care, guys. And let's just see Rambro, 4:40 in Ohio, still eating Halloween candy. 8:41 in London. 1:41 in Arizona. Guys, get some sleep. Take care. Sweet dreams. And 2:42 in Colorado. And see you guys next time. Ciao. Take hot whiskey. Yeah.